Hello and welcome back to On the Mic with Mike. I am Mike Jarvis, and this series continuing our review up to this point of the just held general election in Montserrat. Speaking again with several of the folks that I'd spoken to before during the campaign, getting their insights at that point. So now that we are at the other end of the process, it's good to go back to those particular guests and get a feeling of what they think and where they feel Montserrat should now be headed. So it's looking at the outcome of the election. And for Mr. Vernon Jeffers, did the outcome turn out the way you anticipated? Welcome.
Thank you, Mike, for giving me this opportunity. Yes, the elections came out as I predicted. In fact, 3 months before the election, or 2 months before the election, I did a survey myself, and I found the United Alliance to be leading in terms of them forming the next government, and it did happen that way.
So we have the outcome as you'd anticipated. So now, where do we go from here? As the saying goes, this is where the pedal hits the metal or the rubber hits the road.
Yes, indeed. And according to Premier Meade, based on some of the things that he said in the campaign and some of the things that we talk about, he and I am satisfied that he will pursue the lines and the aims and the things mentioned in the manifesto. Mr. Meade is a man who is about business, and he, like I and you, we're up in age, so he has to do
Up in age, I
most of
beg
what
your
he can do
pardon,
in his
Mr.
5 years.
Jeffers. What? I'm up in age. We're still young men. Come on, all of us. Anyway, sorry, continue.
I say that only to say because the talk in Montserrat is training up the youth to take over and continue Montserrat path of growth. So I figure that Mr. Meade has 5 years to put his mark, and at the same time give those younger persons in his party the opportunity to learn and learn fast, because Montserrat at this point in time do not have much time. We have lost a lot of time, about 30 years already, and now is the time for us to do the things that we need to do.
Certainly. And on that matter of lost a lot of time, I want to get to that with you to develop that further. But I just want to backtrack a bit because where we had a laugh there about the issue of getting up in age and all of that, on a serious note, an issue came up of a very regrettable issue came up of ageism in the political campaign. Now, directed particularly at Mr. Meade. And it was very, very distasteful to me because we're looking at a situation of age, whatever that is supposed to mean in a political context. I mean, I made a reference to the premier of the Turks and Caicos Islands who came back into office, who started campaigning again. Did so, I think he was 72 of the 2 years ago. I think he's now 74 years of age. So, as the saying goes, age is nothing but a number, and we're looking at experience. Now, in your years of political campaigning and during the period when you were very active in politics as a candidate and as a coordinator, public relations officer, could you ever recall having this degree of acrimony
No, we
and
never.
maliciousness?
No, the question of age never came up, and this talk about age and youth and so forth one of the things that Montserratians need to understand and understand it quickly is that you need experience at this point in time and knowledge and the understanding and vision in order to move Montserrat from where it is currently sitting. Because right now, Montserrat is on its knees. It's like a ship anchored or drifting. And you need that experience, that knowledge and understanding of government to move Montserrat from where it is now. And I'm quite sure that those who are speaking ill of Mr. Meade and his age or what have you, they were making a terrible mistake. But then again, it was politics, and I understand the game. You use what you can to destroy the other and to get ahead. And I understand that. So I did not pay much attention. But all I am saying now that Mr. Meade is in office, and I know that he has the experience in and out of government as a politician and as a technician. He knows the ropes. In fact, when he came to Montserrat first to work for the PLM government, he was working with the Caribbean Development Bank and other agencies in Barbados, etc., writing proposals. In fact, I can say this, that in terms of writing projects, Reuben Meade is the best I have ever seen at that. He's very good.
Well, you've certainly given him a glowing endorsement. Just to get back now to the issue of where Montserrat is and the very stark terms in which you put it. So during the campaign, all of us, everybody right across the political spectrum, spoke about Montserrat being at a crossroads. And it's a now or never moment, it's a reset moment, etc. So it's highlighting just how critical it is for us to get it right, and we can put whatever interpretation we want to put on getting it right. My question to you is, what if we don't get it right this time?
Well, the talk of crossroads, I often wonder what that term means, because Montserrat is at a juncture, I would say, where it needs now to do some bold and make some bold steps. Mr. Meade has, and funds have already been approved, I understand, for the hospital, the port that they started. And 2 years ago, they got money to build a parliament building. I am hoping that next year, Mr. Meade would either start these projects or complete one or two of these projects. Apart from that, people complain about the roads in Montserrat. And I'm saying we don't have many streets now because everything is in the north. And we need to turn that area into an oasis. I'm awfully sorry, that was a comment in terms of doing some massive road programs. People complain that Montserrat roads are terrible. We never had that problem before. And it's the same land, the same roads. Why can't we maintain them and get them going so that people are satisfied with Montserrat roads? We had at one time the best roads in the Eastern Caribbean. We can get back there. Would not take much to get back there. I understand they have a new hot mix plant. Put it to work. If it is no good, say it's no good and deal with it. But we need to get our roads back into the shape that they were.
Because, continue, Mr. Jeffers.
Another area of development, and I heard Mr. Meade and others spoke of getting the private sector involved. I said in another broadcast somewhere that Mr. Farrell went to England during his time as Premier. He met with Montserratians. 3 persons in that meeting told him that they have businesses in England, but to move the business to Montserrat, which they would love to do. A, they do not have any place where they can house this business. And 2, if they were to get a place from the private sector to house this business, it will cost too much. How about the government building some cubicles? I mentioned in another broadcast somewhere that all that land in Sweeney's on the lower side of Flow, the government could acquire that land and build business outlets. People would rent them. Those 3 persons in England who spoke so glowingly of their business and would like to come back to Montserrat, give them that opportunity. Provide the space for them and let us see what happens. Another thing I spoke of some time ago, that they have a new program or show. I don't know if it is annual thing or biannual or what the case is, but it is called Prime.
Oh, yes, that's the exposition. Yeah.
And the people who are there displaying their goods, great talent. When I saw some of the things that they're doing in Montserrat, I was surprised. These people, after the show is closed, have to take them back home to their houses. They have no place for them to display and sell and do whatever. The government can get involved in building those cubicles. They could start with 10 cubicles. How much it costs to build them? The government of Montserrat and the Bank of Montserrat can collaborate on matters of this nature and build these things. I am quite sure if they put a program or put a request to the British government for funds to buy that land, the British government would assist them in that. Or they could buy the land some other way. But Montserrat needs to start doing things. And you cannot tell people come back home and they cannot afford to come back home. So you need to give them some form of platform, create an avenue for them to come home. That is my argument.
Right. And in addition to that, you spoke about the capital projects. There's the port project. I understand there have been some delays pertaining to that, but it is there, tremendously scaled back from what was indicated many years ago, but it is what it is. It is an ongoing project. You spoke about the hospital project, getting that started. You spoke about the roads. You spoke about building a commercial infrastructure for the local entrepreneurs, etc. So are you looking then at Montserrat being some sort of a veritable construction site? Again, we had that immediately after the eruption with the emergency housing program being built, and recently there's been talk about another housing scheme as well. So is that what you're looking at? I mean, just getting the construction industry, at least at this juncture, led by the government, get it up and running, and then the private sector residential housing would follow on top of that.
Yes, Montserrat, you see, a lot of emphasis are being put on tourism. A lot of emphasis are being put on agriculture. But construction, building construction, was Montserrat's main industry in terms of development. Construction generates employment and income. income coming into Montserrat. I'm quite sure that a lot of Montserratians would not mind building or coming back to Montserrat and owning something. But the cost of building a house and the way we are building homes in Montserrat with limited spaces, we have to change that. Montserrat no longer can look at what it used to be. We have to now create a new Montserrat. Montserratians who are living abroad have got accustomed to living with a neighbor next door. Why can't the government build units similar to what Montserratians in New York, Canada, and England are living in?
So just to interject here, Mr. Jeffers, so you're making it's a very important sociological point that you're making here, because in Montserrat, traditionally, we all had, for those of us who had, and for those who still have, you have your own house with your yard, your front garden, and your backyard vegetable plot and little open space. So your property sits in the middle or at the side, but that is your individual space. You come out of Montserrat, even in some of the neighboring Caribbean islands, and it's a apartment complex type living. And so that's the sort of shift that you're talking about, that we now need to start considering that in Montserrat, given the smaller space that we are occupying. But if we need to get the population back and grown, especially the indigenous Montserrat population, apartment style living.
Yes, certainly. I heard them speak of the youth leaving Montserrat as soon as they become qualified or after they finish school. They all want to leave and go abroad. Some of them go abroad, get an education, but they can't come back because they're coming back, meaning they're coming back to live with mama and dada. They need their own space. Some one-bedroom apartments or two-bedroom apartments. Some of them would like to get married and live in Montserrat or have their girlfriend live with them. This type of living can't happen now because we are still living in the past. We need to, in that sort of maroon community where Father, Son, and Holy Ghost live together. These young people would like to have their own place. And they could only have their own place if they get affordable apartments. And they would stay. They need responsibility. They need something to keep them in Montserrat. Build these apartments that you can pay down something, or you move in and you pay to own. You lease to own, or you rent to own. They need something to keep them in Montserrat. There's nothing keeping them in Montserrat. And some of them glad for the opportunity to move out from their mommy and their daddy's home. They want to go and live their own lives. They want to be able to cook their own pot. They want to try something. They want to live the way people in Canada, England, and America is living. They see it on TV. They want to move out. But they can't move out in Montserrat because where they're going to go? They can't go underneath a tree.
Exactly.
So they leave to another country where they can do that.
So we're looking then at a housing scheme just to add to the overall construction site that you are anticipating Montserrat could be and really should be in order to get things moving. One thing I did during the election campaign, I looked at all of the manifestos. What I didn't do, I didn't publicly go and compare them. I'm not going to start dissecting manifestos now, but looking at what you're outlining there, to get this going, I'm getting the impression now here that there's a role for the British government. You hinted at that as well, for the British government and the current Montserrat government with their manifesto objectives that they want to implement. But also, are we at the stage where we're going to say again, okay, we need an advanced or renewed or revitalized strategic development plan for Montserrat? Let's get the best of all of the ideas Obviously, the government in office would like to take the lead on that, but get all of these ideas together, get the British government involved, and start an upward trajectory of Montserrat, because I'm actually going back to the point at which we started this element of the conversation, the now or never bit, the Montserrat at the crossroads bit, and the reset bit.
There's one thing about property. Property appreciates. And the government of Montserrat can seek permission from the British government to borrow money on a long-term basis to build homes. If the British government don't want to give it as an aid fund, they can give the government of Montserrat permission to borrow from banks. I am hoping that within the next 5 years, before his 5-year term is up, that Mr. Meade builds at least 100 units, a minimum of 100 units, single, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. We have to be able to retain our people. And the only way we can do that is having a massive housing program. Without that housing program, as soon as they leave school or they leave university or whatever, they are going elsewhere. Because once they're grown, they are grown. They no longer want to live home. Yeah. They want to live on their own.
And that thinking ties in with something that I was considering. I actually wrote something on it a few years ago, because not only on the point that you're making of keeping the Montserratians in Montserrat, particularly the younger ones that were ever so often are leaving, but for those Montserratians who want to return. But bearing in mind, as I wrote before, and some other people have also had similar thoughts, the majority of people who evacuated or had no alternative but to leave the island at that stage were people from the 2/3 of the island that's now practically uninhabitable. And the question is, when those folks return, or if they wish to return to Montserrat, and many of them do, what is it that they have to return to? So there's where your housing project, this idea that we have of a housing scheme, comes into mind. My idea was you build it, you get people to invest in it, whether invest to own or make a down payment for some sort of a long-term rental, eventually rent to buy, buy to own, rent to own, that sort of scheme. And I'm getting the sense that we are on the same wavelength when it comes to that.
Yes, of course. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, the British government embarked on a program similar in their own country. They call it I don't remember the word that they use, but they were
they had the
brown out.
Yeah, to occupy the yes, I know what you're talking about. There had two elements to it. One was the decent home scheme to improve the existing social housing stock. The other one was to occupy a lot of brownfield sites, like old industrial sites, and there was even some discussion about some areas of the green belt that are presently underutilized, because the UK, like I understand America, has, and many parts of Europe, a severe housing shortage. And what you're looking at in Montserrat right now, based on what you're outlining there, that for Montserratians wishing to return home, or those even wishing to stay in Montserrat, the housing is a big issue.
Seriously, it's a big issue. Many Montserratians would like to own something in Montserrat that they can go down and spend 3 weeks and come back. If they could buy a house down there, but they don't want to buy a house that costs $200,000 and $300,000 US. They would like to buy a house that costs $150,000, $170,000, even if the house is an apartment. But they do not want to be spending or asking them If you want to buy a house in Montserrat, the starting price is $250,000, $280,000. These people have a mortgage in America to still pay. You're asking these people to commit themselves to $500,000 or $750,000 housing scheme, housing plan. But I know many Montserratians in America here and some in England who are working would not mind spending $150,000 on a two-bedroom apartment once the apartment and pay also the upkeeping fee, but not $200,000 and $300,000 US.
Yeah, it's an investment prospect for some Montserratian or other persons to consider, in addition to the government, because if you look at the rental market in the UK, for example, and I know for some of the Caribbean countries as well, because of the demand, these are fantastic investments, either for rental or for sale. And we do have several Montserratians who are now returning home or who are investing in property home. So that is the foundation, to use that term, being put in place. But I do take your point that there's a need for the housing stock to be improved and to be made more accessible, to use that term, which leads me on to the matter of access. Mr. Meade did say in an interview on Radio Montserrat a few days after he was successful at the polls with speaking with Basil Chambers, that the ferry, priority matter for him, should be in place. This whole access issue regarding the airport is a massive ongoing discussion. Where do those now sit for you in terms of the priority list that this new government will have to deal with?
Well, Mr. Meade did say that he was going to get that ferry. The ferry is very important. But a lot of Montserratians still live in England who are up in age. They don't want to travel on a ferry. They would like to come home on a plane. From the airport, they don't mind flying on a twin otter. The government of Montserrat has to find a way to get the twin otter operating again. I understand that the St. Vincent airline owned twin otters and they were willing to fly into Montserrat. I understand that there are others who are trying to see if they could get involved in the twin otter business to fly into Montserrat. I listened the other day to a program there that Miss Dorset and Mr. Romeo was questioning a man, Mr. Rothwell, from England, who is a regulator.
Yeah, that's
and
RC, and that was the access inquiry. Yeah.
Mr. Rothwell told Mr. Romeo and Miss Dorset that the cost of extending the runway 300 feet or thereabout would cost too much. And the question of a new airport is a pie in the sky, according to him. So Montserrat have to settle with what we have. Then Mr. Romeo asked him another question, and he said that how he's not an engineer, so he do not know how much it would cost. But yet he is telling the government of Montserrat that the cost would be very high. But yet he's not an engineer. I am quite sure. And another thing he said, that the runway has to be 50 feet wide. Okay, we put in a 50-foot runway by 300 feet. Check the square footage. Mr. Meade came up with an idea of how he can backfill the area, which would not cost much. And I think that Mr. Meade should ask for permission if the British government do not want to give him the money to do it. Put Montserrat in debt. Give him permission to put Montserrat in debt. Montserrat will pay for it. Montserratians will pay for it. Maybe not in my lifetime, but other Montserratians coming will help pay for it. But we need to have the runway extended so that the Twin Otter can land with 19 people and take off with 19 people by the hook or the crook. We got to get it done, because without that, we are wasting time. And these arguments need to be put to the British government in plain, simple language, and they will understand.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jeffers, for taking the time and sharing your insights once again.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis, and thank those who are listening for listening.